Welcome to the Job Shop Show, where we talk with the owners, suppliers, partners, and customers of custom manufacturers. Listen and learn the secrets of top-performing job shops, the tools, techniques, and backgrounds that have made them successful, all in the quest of raising the bar for custom manufacturing. I'm your host, Jay Jacobs. This episode is sponsored by Paperless Parts, connecting buyers and suppliers of custom manufactured parts. The Paperless platform is a secure, ITAR-compliant, cloud-based manufacturing system for suppliers that reduces the amount of time spent on sales, estimating, quoting, administration, and order processing. It offers seamless integration with the accounting and ERP software tools that shops already use, such as QuickBooks, E2, and JobBoss. Paperless Parts was founded with a mission to make manufacturing more accessible by streamlining the quote-to-cash process. Spend less time quoting and more time selling.
This episode is sponsored by our friends at the NTMA, the National Tooling and Machining Association. The NTMA is an association of privately held, entrepreneurial-based, and family-owned businesses representing nearly 1,200 small to mid-sized machine shops and tool and die shops across the country. They have approximately 30 very active regional chapters that host local events, run apprenticeship programs, and provide other services to their regional members. As an association of peers, the goal of the NTMA is to help members of the U.S. precision custom manufacturing industry achieve profitable growth and business success in a global economy through networking, workforce development and training, technology, best practices education, advocacy, programs, and services with industry partners. To learn how your company can get involved with the NTMA, including how to join, visit ntma.org.
Shazam! This is Jay Jacobs. Welcome to the Job Shop Show. Have you ever considered opening up your company's financials to the workforce? Today's guest, Reid Leland, has done so and with remarkable success. Reid is the founder and president of LeanWerks in Ogden, Utah, and he has created a better shop. And I use the word better deliberately, as it is part of their trademark, we make everything better. We will discuss what that means, as well as what has been behind the success of LeanWerks that won them multiple awards so far, including the prestigious Top Shop Award. LeanWerks focuses on manufacturing the very most demanding of parts, and the word high is common in describing the environments and types of parts that they manufacture. High precision, high pressure, high temperature. They even like Inconel. Welcome to the Job Shop Show, Reid.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
On your website profile, you prompt the reader to ask you about lemon trees. And I do want to hear the answer to that. But first, I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you speak Russian. How did you come about learning Russian?
Well, we had to take 2 years of foreign language in high school, and just so happens that Russian was one of our options. So, typically it's Spanish or French, and we had the opportunity to learn Russian. We had a Russian immigrant. Actually, in those days, she was from the Soviet Union, but she immigrated to the United States and was teaching Russian in our high school. So I took it for a couple of years and enjoyed it. And she had some connections back in the former Soviet Union and actually arranged a 5-week tour for us one summer. We went back there and went all over the place and had a great time, and took it actually for 3 years and became fluent enough to get by in Russia. So it was a great experience.
Have you ever been back?
I have not, nor do I really desire to.
I'm just wondering what you would see as the differences between when it was the Soviet Union and it's now Russia, but how it's the same, but it would probably be a lot different.
I would imagine it's different, as many places would be. That was, 35 years ago. So yeah. I was a teenager, and, there were some pretty stark differences between what I was used to in America and what I saw there. And I think now with 50 years of life under my belt, I could probably get more out of it and see and understand better, but I'm sure it's quite different today.
So what's up with lemon trees?
Well, interesting story, I guess. Interesting enough that a marketing person thought it was worthy of putting in my bio. I grew up for 7 years. I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and we lived in a subdivision that was built in an old orchard. And so many of the homes in our subdivision had citrus trees. Most of them were grapefruit trees. And still, the pickers would come around when I lived there and pick the grapefruits and take them off for juicing or whatever. But we had a couple other trees in our yard, and we had a lemon tree that had a lime branch grafted onto it. And I lived there from the age of 7 to 14.
What do you mean by you had a lime tree branch grafted onto it? How do you do that?
So that I don't personally know, but I know it can be done. There's a way to graft a branch of one tree onto another tree, and it takes and lives and survives. And so we had this tree that grew almost all lemons, beautiful big yellow lemons, and one branch had these green limes on it.
So you made the lemon tree better.
Yeah, it made the lemon tree better. And I would, as the story says on my website, I would pick those, and we were one of the only people in our neighborhood with those fruit. So I would take them around on my wagon and sell them to neighbors. And I was always interested in finding a way to make a buck, even as a kid. So that's the story.
So you started out as an entrepreneur when you were very young.
Evidently, yeah.
Yeah. There are so many really interesting parts of how you approach business, but before we jump into those, maybe you could just give us a thumbnail sketch of LeanWerks so we can think about the approach that you've taken from what you've actually created when you started, number of team members, square feet, types of parts, types and numbers of machines, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the dry part of it. I mean, today today is an interesting day because of what's going on with coronavirus, but we're 22 people, and we have roughly 40% of our business is in high pressure pumping for oil and gas, and 60% of our business is in various aerospace and defense markets, commercial and government. And we're obviously working through the current challenge, but that's what we do. Those are the types of parts we make. And so, yeah, like I said, that's the dry part of it. The story I like to tell about LeanWerks to help people understand it a little bit better is how it came to be.
Yeah.
And so I graduated from Weber State University here in Ogden in 1993 with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. And I thought I wanted to save the world. I was kind of a closet tree hugger, and went to University of Oklahoma to get a master's degree in civil environmental engineering, where I could help address all these environmental issues that were so hot topic at the time, and in many ways still are. And so I got that degree, and my first job out of school ended up bringing me back here to Ogden. I worked at Hill Air Force Base, and decided I really didn't like cleaning up messes. And so I went back to my mechanical roots at Weber, and went back to work with a company that I actually worked for part-time as a student at Weber called SetPoint. And SetPoint was an industrial automation integrator that would design and build clean sheet machinery from scratch for companies that needed automation that you couldn't buy it off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. And their philosophy was built on this open book management. And that's where I really kind of cut my teeth in the world of business, and became the general manager of that company after a few years. And in 2001, after the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the dot-com bubble was kind of imploding at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
SetPoint was having a hard time keeping the hoppers full. And the owners who had branched out to start a new venture, their new venture was having a hard time at the same time, and they couldn't afford to be absentee owners. And so they came back to run SetPoint, and I was let go. And that really was the first domino to fall in the creation of LeanWerks. And what happened was I had a great relationship with the owners.
Mm-hmm.
And after about a year of bouncing around trying to find something I really liked, and I liked SetPoint so much that it was hard for anything to live up to it. And it had a unique culture based on open book management. And so, I mean, it really kind of set me up for not being able to be happy anywhere else. And I had a great relationship with the owners. And after about a year, they came to me and said, "Hey, we outsource a lot of machine work. Why don't you start a machine shop and we'll partner with you?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "I'm an engineer. I'm not a machinist. That's not me. No thanks." Mm-hmm. Well, it planted a seed, and after a month or two, I started researching and doing all this stuff, and I went back to them a few months later and said, maybe that does sound good. Are you still interested? And they said, yeah. So we partnered, and in June of 2003, LeanWerks was formed. They owned 40%. I owned 60.
Ah.
And I built it on the very open book management principles that I was so fond of at SetPoint. And so that's how we got started. And I had a captive customer to help me learn the ropes, because I wasn't a machinist, but it was.
Did they contribute, besides business, financial capital to get going?
So another interesting part of the story, because I contributed 80% of the startup capital, and SetPoint contributed 20% of the startup capital. But they got 40% of ownership, and I got 60. Mm-hmm. And that's because I wanted them to I couldn't get a loan. I go buy $100,000 piece of equipment, and I needed to do all this stuff, and I didn't have enough money to to bootstrap that. So so that's why we split it, because they were gonna co-sign on the debt with me. That's why we split it like that. So that was the contribution out of the gate.
Did you have a agreement in place for you to buy them out down the road? Was that?
We had a very thorough, thank God, it was one of the best things we did, very thorough operating agreement, membership agreement that stipulated after so many years, there was a buy-sell option, and there was rules about decision making for typical stuff, but decision making on major purchases and so forth. And there was a stipulation that my spouse could not work at the company. So for the first 4 years, it was she could obviously come and visit, but she couldn't work.
So whose idea was it to create this comprehensive operating agreement?
Well, the owners of SetPoint are savvy business people, and they and we work with some great legal and tax advisors, and so they had formed several other small companies, spin-offs of SetPoint. The founder of SetPoint, Joe Cornwell, used to call his strategy the onion strategy. I mean, he'd keep on creating these companies, and he'd call them layers on the onion, and this machine shop was just another layer on the onion. And he was also very had a abundance mentality. There's enough for everybody. So he didn't feel like he had to own or control every company that he started. He just wanted a piece of it. And he was very helpful to those companies as they started. So I think LeanWerks was one of the first companies they started. They started another company called Rocky Mountain Testing Solutions. They started Setpoint Amusement, which made roller coasters, and a lot of different companies. But that was the reason that we had a good agreement up front. Was
so
that
that's really uncommon, though. That's why I'm curious about it. We had an operating agreement at Rapid, but it was more of a prenup, an agreement of disagreement, if you will. Whereas it sounds like this was even more intentional, and very thoughtful in how you would make those decisions, and had the foresight that you probably would want to buy them out at some point.
Well, I attribute that to they're just really savvy and smart guys. The CFO, who was a minority holder in Setpoint, was an MBA from Berkeley and worked at Ford Motor Company and decided he hated big companies, but he was very very astute. And then the two engineers that were equal partners in Setpoint, Joe Cornwell and Joe Vandenberg, were just really passionate and very open. And I think, really exemplified this world of abundance mentality and they brought more people to the table. And because of that, I think they operated on a lot of really good ideas and good principles.
So how did you learn about machining so that you could actually make parts?
Good question. Maybe the Joes at Setpoint had more confidence in me than I did, but they figured I could figure it out. And that's what I did. I just figured it out. I got on a plane with a salesman from New West Machine Tools here, which was back in the day, which was the Morisaki dealer here in the Salt Lake Valley. We flew to California and looked at a used mill, and it was about $100,000, and I decided to buy it. And so we shipped it out here and put it in the shop, and which was a corner of Setpoint. I was just leasing this 1,500 square foot corner in their building. And for a month, that salesman, Tim, came by every afternoon, not for a month, for 2 weeks, came by every afternoon and spent a few hours, an hour or two with me, and showed me how to run Gibbs Cam and how to pick tools and how to set G54 and how to program and do it all. And so I just, in 2 weeks, it was a crash course. By the end of this second week, I could program a part, set it up, run it, and I could make parts. And I started making parts for Setpoint.
Wow.
So that's how it happened.
So for anyone who's thinking about buying a shop, who's listening, thinking about buying a shop and saying, do I have to know how to make parts? The answer is no. And I'll share how I got to make parts. I was a sales guy, and I was selling CAD CAM software, and I had the idea of using CAM beyond how it was typically being used in 1993 to machine surfaces to create prototypes, as opposed to the typical way back then of piecing them all together. So I left the sales world. I joined a prototype shop, and I knew how to program. That was pretty easy, sort of like playing a video game. But I got on the machine. The owner had a lot of faith in me, but I got out there on the floor, and I had to very humbly go over and ask one of the traditional model makers, how do you set a zero? And they just sort of looked at me as, here's this tech whiz, and he's going to help save the shop, bring us into the 21st century, and he doesn't even know how to set a zero.
Yeah, who is this kid? Yeah.
Yeah, and a couple times, luckily the machining centers weren't closed because we used a double-sided tape a lot on plastics, and I forgot to tape them down. So all of a sudden you'd hear this thump and the part would go flying off. And
Yeah.
oops. So, but I didn't have any experience. I've been in a lot of machine shops, seen stuff, but you can learn it. You can get the basics. Let me say that approaching the level of the folks who worked for me, who I worked with, who I'm sure in your shop, there's just so many years of experience there. But at least
Yeah.
you get a sense of what they're doing. It actually makes you probably appreciate it more, right?
Much more. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. How did you get the name LeanWerks?
My wife, even though she wasn't allowed to work here, and she had a career of her own, so it's not like she wanted to. She has a degree in accounting, and she was the manager of financial accounting for Duke Energy. They had an office in Salt Lake, and so she had a rip-roaring career. But obviously we talked, and we were going to call it Set Point Production. We had all kinds of different names, and we just got to talking, and she knows that we're big believers in lean manufacturing, and so we got to throwing ideas back and forth, and the word lean came out, and she goes, "Well, why don't you call it LeanWerks?" I'm like, "That's a good name. Let's do that." And then I shared that with Joe Cornwell at Set Point, and he said, who's the most creative, conceptual, brilliant guy I know. And he said, and that's good. And you ought to spell the works with E, like the German way, just give it a little marketing flair. So that's where it came from.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I like it. I think it definitely, it's a cool name.
Yeah.
When did your wife join the company, and was that her joining part of the process that made you want to buy out your partners? Because I assume at that point, if you wanted her in the business, that they wouldn't be involved.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't really it. What happened over the course of the first 3 or 4 years is I realized that running a machine shop is hard work, and I, without fail, in the first 3 or 4 years of the business, sales were not the problem. We got plenty of sales. We started with Set Point. We added Autoleave and all these other places, and we were getting all the work we wanted. Mm-hmm. And invariably we'd get bound up on a delivery date, and I wouldn't miss a delivery date. So I would, almost every month there would be a day or two where I'd come into the shop at 6 a.m, and after 6 months we had a few people, and I'd work through the day with the people. Then I'd keep working all through the night, making parts and finishing orders. They'd show up the next morning, I'd still be there, and I'd work till that afternoon. So, I'd work 30 or more hours straight on multiple occasions in the first few years. And we developed a good reputation that, we hit our dates. But it was grueling. And I thought, I'm getting 60 cents out of every dollar I'm bringing in. And this is hard work, and it's competitive and all this stuff. And I thought, we had the buy sell built into the operating agreement. I think it was after 3 or 4 years I could buy it out. There was a formula, 3 times EBITDA with the progressive blah blah blah. And I could buy out. They owned 40. I could buy out 30%. They had a clause in there that would allow them to maintain 10%. And I just told them when we got to the point where I could exercise that option, I said, I want to exercise my option, and I want to buy it all. And they were kind of, I think, big enough people to realize they didn't want to be partners in a business with a majority owner that didn't want them in. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I didn't like them or didn't appreciate it. I to this day, we're still very close friends. But I was just frank with them. I told them it's too hard not to be able to to get all the earnings. And so they allowed me to use the formula to buy the last 10% too. So, for for all the money I could mortgage my house for and all the money in savings, I was able to scrape together enough to buy them out. And because it took that much money, we just took that and put it in my wife's name, Susie's name. And so she became a partner at that point, still with her own career going, and not needing to work with us. But we had by this point, we had 3 kids and they were very young. And so she was only working part-time, but that was how we came to own 100% of the business, and how we and where we are today. So.
And today you are president and she is CEO and CFO. Is that how you divvy it up?
That is correct. Yeah.
What's it like having your wife as a business partner? Because sometimes it works out great and sometimes it's not so good. And I know she'll probably listen to this. So, but I'll share that I hadn't even started the shop yet, but I was a manufacturer's rep and I wanted to sell, and my wife was supposed to be doing the books, and she just didn't have a sense of urgency on it. And I would get mad and frustrated, and it got to a certain point. I said, you know what? I'd rather have a wife than a bookkeeper. So I went out and got a part-time bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And so what's it like for you?
That may be, I not to be condescending, but that may be the more typical, your story. I think ours is atypical. My wife is a phenomenal accountant. I've worked with a lot of accountants in my time, and she is, in my fully humble and unbiased opinion, the best accountant I've ever worked with. She's just really competent. That's why it works. I mean, she is super competent, and she hates the fact that people think she has the position that she has because she's my wife. And that nothing drives her crazier than that. She earns it every day she comes to work. So she started working in 2009 when we had that financial crisis and had some issues with the company, and we had some people that we had to let go and to kind of make it through that. She came in and started helping out, and she, throughout her career, she was a financial accountant at Hitachi and Duke Energy, and she had some big company experience, and she kind of always used to think, your little company's probably really easy. I could probably do that in my sleep. And so she came in to start helping out, and she got a taste of it and she loved it. And she thought, this is way more exhilarating and fun than I thought it would be. And so she's been really, she started off part-time for a few years helping out, but then I can't remember the actual year that she went full-time, but she's been full-time and an absolute critical part of the business for a long time.
Do you have a formal way of shutting it off at home so business doesn't consume your relationship?
No. The answer to that is no. We do not. And sometimes it does. And sometimes it's a challenge. Yeah. But we seem to complement each other very well. I'm more of the long-term thinker and the conceptual, and I help technically in the shop. She is much more short-term, high intensity, very precise and hard driving. And so we complement each other very well. I'm less risk averse, hence the fact that I started the company. She is very risk averse. And so we balance each other out, and we just, I think on the real important decisions, we do a pretty good job of listening to each other, but on the day-to-day stuff, some of the noise, sometimes it gets a little challenging to shut it down, but we work our way through it. Nothing formal. Sometimes I wish we did, but we don't.
You don't have that operating agreement like you did with the Set Point guys.
Yeah, not to that level.
No buyouts. Um, so let's just talk about now how I really like how intentional you have been in creating the culture, the DNA of LeanWerks. And your trademark is we make things better. And some of the things that you describe are better parts, better process, better people. Who came up with that? And talk just about better.
Yeah. So this was an effort. This is the result of an effort that happened in 2015. I listened to a webinar in which a gentleman named Michel Nere, who's from Canada, Toronto, was being interviewed about some of the secret sauce of businesses and success and all this stuff. And he said some things that stuck with me. And so I called him and brought him down and hired him. And he did this deep dive for a few days and got to know me and some key players. And then he came up with this, what he called the LeanWerks essential message. And basically it was a distillation of our DNA and what makes us unique and what makes us who we are. And basically that's what he felt like it was, is that everything we do, we're not satisfied just to do it. We're all driven by this internal code that says, if you're going to do it better, make it better. And so he felt like that was a good marketing tagline for us. And me being an engineer and Susie being an accountant, we don't have a lot of marketing expertise, and this guy's a pure marketer, and so he kind of put the marketing flair on it, and that's what he.
So it was already at LeanWerks. He just pulled it out.
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So before the podcast began, we had talked about your core philosophy, your core values is an acronym, RADAR. Did that come out of his discovery as well?
No.
And what is RADAR, first of all?
No, RADAR is an acronym that stands for our 5 core principles. And those core principles are resourcefulness, accountability, developer, abundance, and respect. And so, and there's a description for each one of those that kind of fills it out and brings it to life. And those were really in place from the beginning. And I had heard about a process of approaching, big things, this process of 4 Ps, where you start anything you want to do, you start with your purpose. And then once you figure out what your purpose is, once you know and discover your purpose, you have to understand your principles. And then when you get your principles that you want to operate by established, then you can bring on the people. And then when you have the people, then you can work together on what the plan is. And so many people start with the plan before they know the other stuff. But I loved that approach. And so before we even wrote up the operating agreement for LeanWerks with SetPoint, I sat down and worked through, what is our purpose going to be? And what are our guiding principles going to be? And so I was very intentional about that. I actually have it written down, and we did that. And so that's how we started, and that's where those principles came from. We didn't really the radar coin and the acronym and all the things that we do in the shop now around that came later, but the principles were in place, and we would publish them and talk about them, but we're doing a lot more with them now.
I'm thinking of what you said in terms of, and I have to say, I had the purpose and the principles, but they were more in my head. I just put together a business plan for Rapid, and I had a philosophy, but it wasn't articulated like you put forth. And I think probably a lot of people do that. So I would say, first of all, it's probably never too late. What would you say to a shop owner who's up and running and is trying to extract that from their company? Should they hire a consultant like that? Is it something you can do yourself, or what's a good way to get started?
I don't think there's one way to do it, and that's just me. I mean, that approach of figuring it out first and doing that up front, that's just who I am. I know wildly successful business people who didn't even have a plan. It just kind of happened. And you know what I mean? There's so many different ways to become successful.
But if you wanna try to pull out a purpose, what is Simon Sinek? Start with why? Is that the type?
Yeah,
of thing
that's good. That's a really popular one that I like. Stephen Covey is one, obviously, that with the abundance stuff that I'm happy with.
By the way, I think abundance is such a great word, and that you can take it in so many different directions. It's a great mindset to have, because the opposite is a scarcity mindset. So it comes into play, I've said before on the podcast, of looking at spending money as either an investment or an expense. And an abundance mindset it's an investment. Whereas a scarcity mindset is an expense, and I would really want to minimize those because I only have so much money.
Right. And the scarcity mindset doesn't see the money you can make with the investment.
Right.
Or they might logically know it's there, but emotionally they can't count on it. Right. And so those of us with the abundance mentality almost go, I mean, I'm sharing a little bit about the dynamic between Susie and me. I mean, she if we spend this 250 grand on this machine, it's going to do all this, and you don't know that, where's the proof? I said, there's no proof, but we got to believe in ourselves. And so
so how, if you're communicating radar to someone who you've just brought on board, well, let's pick, we talked about abundance. Well, how do you communicate one of the other words? Do you have stories? How do you bring radar really into the company so it's not just some words on the wall?
That's a great question. And that's exactly the question that was driving me crazy for the first, 13, 14 years of the business. It meant so much to me, but I didn't feel like as a company that we were living that every day. And so a few years ago, that question had burned me up so much that I thought we just have to do something. So we came up with the core coin concept, and we made 5 different coins. Each of the coins has the word engraved on it. Okay. And then it has a sentence that fills it out and describes what it means. Abundance, the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There's enough for everybody. Win-win. And that's what it says. And so each one of our coins says that on it. And then we have a 6th coin that's a radar coin that just says radar on it, and then it has each one of the principles engraved around the circumference of it. So we've got these coins. Then how does it work? So we have in the break room and all over the shop a description of each one of the core principles, and then a description of how this program works, where we each person can nominate one person a week for anything they see. If they see somebody that exemplifies one of those core principles, then they can nominate that person, and all they do is send me an email or write me a note, or their lead a note or whatever. And so each week I'm getting 3, 4, 5, 7, sometimes 10 nominations for someone. Valerie stayed late to make sure and get this shipped, or so-and-so had an idea to make this better, and so they get the developer award or coin. And so we have a weekly meeting, all hands meeting in the break room, and the second item on the agenda after we go through results is core coin nominations. And so I read it out. you know, Kim nominated Valerie for accountable, and then there's a description. She did X, Y, and Z, and so it really helped the company, and so that's a weekly event, and then every month we have a winner of the radar coin. So that goes to the person who most exemplifies the overall living the core principles. And I picked the first winner, but then from then on for the last few years, it's been the last winner picks the next winner for each month.
I love that.
So really it's become this thing. And then we've got a deal where once you get so many coins, you can trade them in for lunch for your team. You can trade them in for LeanWerks swag. So it's actually worked really well. We've done a lot of little programs here that some of them kind of fade and fizzle. This one stuck, and it's really brought our core principles to life. And the new people get it immediately because we're doing that and talking about it every week.
Yeah, we had an acronym. And like you, it didn't come together until we had been in business for quite a while, but our acronym was PAUSE, which was P, prototypes first, A, anticipate the customer, U, under promise, over deliver, S, sense of urgency, and E, enjoy the journey. And I think like you, I wanted to come up with a way to describe how we operated that embodied the culture. And I think it's really important, and it's what you did, that the core values, core philosophy was what we were already doing rather than what we wanted to be. And it was really important to be able to live or try to live those values every day, because those were how the shop was running and you didn't want to stray from them. Yeah. So actually one of the things we did was when we were interviewing, I would tell folks or whoever was interviewing the 5 core values, and we'd say, which one resonates with you most? And tell us why, just to see if they did, because if none of them did, then wasn't going to be a good fit.
That brings up an idea that we have not executed yet, and that is to go around and ask people and videotape it. What does developer mean to you? What does accountable mean to you? And then create a video montage of people.
I love that. Yeah.
And because we use a lot of video here, and we have the ability to kind of use that in our training. So that's on the bucket list of things to do.
Yeah. The other thing we did, which was instead of just telling someone great job, we trained the managers first to describe it in terms of one of the core values. That was a great job, because you anticipated what the customer was going to want, and you made sure we had the tooling in place so that we could execute on that. I think that was really helpful. So so better people embedded within the DNA of LeanWerks. I liked, again, before we were talking, you used the phrase of everybody talks about this not a skilled workforce, it's tough to hire people, and you decided to create your own destiny rather than be a victim. So if you could just talk to that and what you've done to bring up the people who are within LeanWerks, as well as make sure you've got a pipeline of talent.
Yeah. So, we grew really fast. I would say from about 2009, when we struggled through that crisis, we got down to about 6 people. We had been about 20 people before that.
Yep.
But that really knocked us in the knees. And then, so we went from about 6 people to, in 2014, so in 6 years, we were 65 people. So we
Wow.
grew really fast, and we had a lot of growing pains through that time, and we had decided, that we can't. I mean, we did exactly what you said. We said, we're not going to be victims. We're going to take control of our own destiny, and we're going to implement a training program. We're going to find a way to screen people when we're interviewing them for the right stuff. The aptitude and the attitude, and we're going to look for people who are humble, hungry, and smart, and get them in here, and then train them. And so that was the approach to it. And then we struggled with a lot of different things, trying to figure out how to train in an efficient way that didn't create tons of administrative burden. And we struggled with that for a long time. And honestly, we still struggle with it, but we've gotten a lot better at it. And over the years, we've gotten Department of Labor approved. We have a certified apprenticeship program in here. And
So how many other machine shops in Utah have a certified apprenticeship program?
One that I know of.
Was that hard to get through the system, or were they pretty easy to work with?
It was difficult in that the apprenticeship lead in Utah that works for Department of Labor was well intended, but it just was painstakingly slow. So you have to let them in to audit your program and do some stuff, and then you got to send your thing, your manual to them, and your training protocols and all that stuff, and then they approve it. And so it took us a long time to kind of iterate through, well, you're missing this, or this doesn't fit. And we had to kind of wrangle that in until we got it approved. But that took, I'm guessing, but 18 to 24 months, something like that. I didn't keep track of it exactly, but it took a long time.
Did you have a template that you were following that someone gave you or you found on the web somewhere, or did you have to create this from scratch working with them?
We created ours from scratch. The hours tracking forms, but they're out there. I mean, you can find some things.
And how many apprentices do you have gone through the program or are working in it now with you?
There's, I'm going to say there are about 14 people in it right now.
Wow.
We have had one go through all the way to journeyman. We have 3 other journeymen on staff already that got theirs elsewhere. And so, and we do it in a way, in order to comply with the standard, we have what we call a pre-apprenticeship program that they can go through and track all their hours and get the training. And they're not officially in the apprenticeship program, but we can only have 1 trainee per journeyman.
Okay.
And so, so as soon as one of our trainees matriculates and gets their journeyman certificate, we can move someone in from the pre-apprenticeship program right at the level where they are, and they may only have 6 months or a year and a half to get their journeyman, because they've been progressing through the pre-apprenticeship program the whole way.
You're talking a fair amount of people. Do most of the folks who go through the program stick with you, or are you seeding other shops as well? And
it helps us attract people. I don't know if it helps us retain people. I just think that we have pretty decent retention, and it's gotten better over the years. We've had periods where it's been tough, especially in some tough economic times. But
yeah.
I really don't know, Jay, on that, if it's moved the needle on retention. I can guarantee it's moved the needle on on recruiting and getting them in. And oftentimes we know in the first 90 days if they're not cut from the right cloth. And so there's an intentional separation. But it probably has helped with retention. Our core people have been steady over the years. It's the people that come and go on the fringes, and and some of those have worked out really well and moved into the core, what I would say.
So what I'm hearing is that it's, even though you put in a lot of effort and you may not retain everyone, or maybe even the majority, what it's done for you is created that core group that otherwise you might not have, and that's the foundation that you can build upon. Is that a good way of saying it?
I think so. I think that's good. I think the other thing I would share, just for people listening that want to understand apprenticeship programs, is the Department of Labor side of it requires that you record your hours. And as much as people want to be in an apprenticeship program and progress towards a journeyman certificate, they have to be responsible enough to record their hours and turn them in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a website where you can turn them in so that you can get those. And it's amazing how many people are so dead set on getting into a place where they can get on an apprenticeship path. And then once they're here and they're in it, they really struggle to keeping track of their hours. That's their responsibility. We're not going to do it for them.
Right.
And so all they have to do is fill out a sheet once a week. It's manual. Wow. And that's what I find fascinating is that the majority of people in the apprenticeship program do not track. We would have half a dozen journeymen right now if they were all tracking their hours and turning them in that had matriculated through the program. We've had one, and so
I almost see that as a shortcoming of the Department of Labor, because if you could create an app where you could do it on your phone, it'd be so much easier for them to put their hours in, right? Well,
I think so. It's not hard to write it down on a piece of paper. We give them.
I get that, but I guess it's one of those philosophy questions. Is yes, they should do it, and there's so many things that people should do in your shop, but you can only fight so many battles, and what I always used to try to do with my people was amplify their strength and protect their weaknesses. And obviously filling out paperwork is a weakness for a lot of people. So rather than punish them for something that's a weakness, I just had that mentality of protect the weakness. And anyway, that's the way I look at it.
Well, I think that's kind of a noble approach. But the fact is the Department of Labor does require you to submit so you have to scan it. You have to fill out your chart. Then you have to scan it on our scanner. Then you have to upload the scan to an email and send it off to the Department of Labor. And they're keeping track. It's called RAPIDS. It's an acronym for something, but it tracks all the apprenticeships that they're. And so that's it's just old school, and it's not set up on anything that would work with an app, at least not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Well, we teased everyone in the beginning and said that you, from the beginning, have used the open book management philosophy. So can you tell folks what is open book management and why you chose to take that approach? It sounds like you started at Set Point. Give us some background and what over the years has been what you've seen by implementing the positives and maybe perhaps some of the things that haven't gone as well as you might have liked.
Yeah, for sure. So the short story on the background is Joe Cornwell and Joe Vandenberg, who started Set Point, when they worked together at a company called Aerodynamics, they became friends and read this book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack.
Great book.
You've read it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jack and they thought, this is how you run a business. And so they started Set Point. And when I was at Weber State, a student still, and I was one of their first employees. And they would photocopy chapters of the book. We would they didn't have a building. They were moonlighting while they started Set Point. We would go to someone's apartment or a park or something, and we would take turns reviewing chapters of the book together. And
like a manufacturing or management book club, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And so and then we were getting jobs with Morton Thiokol, little tooling jobs, and we would design and build these fixtures. We'd outsource all the machining, but we would bring them in, assemble it, and do electric test fixtures and stuff like that. And we would dissect the financials of every project we did as a group, as a company. And there was only 5 or 6 of us at the time. And then as the company grew, and last year they sold for I don't know how many tens of millions to Hitachi.
Wow.
Or maybe more. I mean, so from 92 or 91 when they started till like a year and a half ago, it evolved through that whole time. So I'm telling you about the very beginning, but it evolved from just talking about it to having daily and weekly processes, to putting it on boards, having visual tools. And by the time I started LeanWerks, I was well indoctrinated. And so that's it. And what it is, it's sharing the financial results of the company with everybody. And the philosophy is that the intelligence of the group is greater than the intelligence of any one individual. And that the financial statements are the ultimate scoreboard of whether you're winning or losing. And so that's the basis of it. And so what we do is every week we get together as a company and we review financial results. Every day, our shop has a daily profit and loss statement. We know if we make or lose money every day. And we have our shop divided into 4 cells.
So that's shared every day with people?
It's posted. It's in the shop on a big, huge board.
Every day?
Every day. It's
okay.
Every day at 9 o'clock, the management team meets around that board. And we call it our Tier 3 accountability meeting. And so there's Tier 1 and Tier 2 that happened before that. Tier 1 meeting is between the machinist and their cell lead. The Tier 2 meeting, and they each have a board in their cell. The Tier 2 meeting is between the cell leads and the shop manager. And then the Tier 3 meeting is between the quality manager, the engineering manager, myself, the CEO, CFO, and the sales. So there's 5 of us, and all that information that had been that flows up from the cell goes onto a board, and the board shows whether we made or lost money in each cell, and then whether we made or lost money as a shop, cumulative. And then we have a daily total and a month-to-date total. And ultimately, the key metric that comes out of that is what we call our GP over OE ratio, our gross profit over operating expense. And so if gross profit over operating expense is 1, that means we broke even. If it's less than 1, we lost money. If it's greater than 1, we made money. And our profit sharing, which is another key tenet of open book management, kicks in when the ratio is 1.2. So if we get a month-to-date ratio over 1.2, there's a formula that dictates how much money goes into the profit sharing pool, and then that profit sharing pool gets shared amongst the employees by another. We distribute shares to the employees, and so it translates into a share price, and so they can see, if it's 93 cents a share and they've got 200 shares, they're going to get $186. So for that month, so that's kind of how it works. And then
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the final piece of it that makes it work is the training. So we have 4 one-hour training modules that train people on time value of money, income statement and balance sheet. Cash flow is the third one, and the fourth one is metrics. So balance sheet metrics, current ratio, liquidity, debt to equity, things of that nature. So we take 1 hour, and so 4 hours in total, and run them through that training. And at the end of that training, and it's tailored so that they understand our
who created the videos?
Joe Knight. He was the financial minority partner of SetPoint, and he wrote a book called Financial Intelligence, which is one of the Harvard Business Review top 100 business books of all time, and he consults on it all over the world now. But he's got a company called Business Literacy Institute, and we actually lease an office in our shop to he and his partner, and they literally go all over the world. EA Sports, I mean, the biggest companies, GE, they're doing financial training for those guys, and they have a video series, and they're housed in our shop, and he's a former partner from SetPoint.
Wow.
And he comes down to our all hands meeting every now and then and talks to us. But so it's a very synergistic type of situation.
Wow.
So,
what a great resource to have right there.
Yeah.
Do you find then, obviously the videos are not going to help people understand everything. So, but do you find that the team members do pretty much get their arms around the concepts enough that they, when the numbers are on the boards, they can understand them? Or
not from the training alone. What happens is that every week we have a meeting and we talk about the numbers, and so the numbers become real once they're with us week after week, and we we talk about them. Now, I will say that the level of understanding and engagement on the numbers ebbs and flows based on our training efforts. So if we get too busy for a year and don't update the training or get the new people through it, that understanding goes down. But there's also the core group of people who really understand it, that are out there that maintain the floor, right? I mean, they maintain the bottom of the understanding. They make sure that that there is a base level of understanding at our shop. And the other thing that brings it to life is that there is that big GP over OE board in the shop, right in the middle of the shop, where people walk by it every day, and so they know they're looking at that key number, GP over OE. What is it today? What was it for my cell? What was it for my machine? We have it down to that level. And there's a lot of allocations that go on with expenses on how much expense to allocate to each area and each cell and each machine. But we talk about that in the huddle. Hey, allocations aren't perfect, but the overall number is right, because there's some give and take. So those conversations, and over time, people's understanding improve.
I'm thinking about this from my perspective as a shop owner, and probably a lot of the listeners. It's like, whoa, there's no way I'm going to show all my financials to everyone in the company. There's a few different reasons. One, it's private. Two, they won't understand, and they'll think we're super greedy. And I look back, and I certainly didn't have the financial competency in the beginning, even if I wanted to do that. And then it's almost like it got to a point where the effort to do it would have been pretty I don't want to say challenging. It would have taken a lot of effort to put into place. And I think there's people who probably, and I'd be interested if this happens to your organization, they just don't understand it, and they see the numbers and it turns them off for some reason. And so if I put it into the company as an ongoing concern, would there be key people who would maybe walk away? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. The first thing I would say is It is how we run the company. It is our primary mode for performance feedback. Every shop does something to provide performance feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so our performance feedback is built around that ratio, GP over OE. So whether or not you're doing that, which is a financial approach to feedback, or whether you're just doing pure throughput and quality and, on time or whatever, you're doing something to manage performance and give that feedback. And this is just how we do it. And the way we've developed it's become fairly efficient for us. It's not an overwhelming, time-consuming endeavor.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it for somebody who says, I really would like to do it, but I'm afraid, or maybe it's too late in my shop's journey.
So to that point, I would say, is it part of your core value system? If you value the transparency, because some of the things that come out of this, it flattens your organization. There's accountability flows up as fast and as hard, or even more so than it flows down.
Yeah.
Because mistakes are transparent and it shows up on the board. You bid that wrong. Why didn't you check on that customer's credit ratio? They're not paying us. I mean, because we cover cash. How much cash do you have? Why aren't we? So there's a lot of, the transparency is great, and there's no place to hide. That's the other thing that comes out of this is poor performers. There is absolutely no place to hide. So poor performers get weeded out pretty fast. So if that's the kind of culture you want, very transparent, and not that you can't have a transparent culture in another way, but this forces it, then you can do it. To your other point, there are people that this is a huge turnoff to, and it becomes a filter. So you will lose people, and you may lose highly skilled, good contributors if they're not used to it from the outset, if you're trying to convert. I had a guy that was a great machinist, journeyman, longtime machinist, that said, this is the first place I've ever worked where I worry about it at night. And I said, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want.
but that's not what he wanted, right?
That's not what he wanted, and he left. And so I've always said open book management creates an equitable distribution of stress. I still feel the most, but other people feel it too. And along with that, it creates what I call psychic ownership.
Yeah.
Because they know the numbers, and it creates this psychological connection to the company that they feel and act like owners, because we're sharing with them the financial information. And so those are, to me, the benefits that come out of it. And, we don't do detailed budgeting, and we share the information, and we focus on broad costing approaches and strategic marketing. And it's not like big company finance where, there's complex costing and things of that nature. So it's a way to run the business that gets the information out, and because people have the right information, we believe that it fosters better decision making. So do I need this end mill? Well, I know that's going to affect my expendable tooling number for my cell, or do I need that fixture? Is there another way to do it? And so we get that kind of behavior.
I wonder, though, just to be sort of devil's advocate, that it's good that they're thinking about those sort of things, but are they perhaps missing a bigger picture when they're so focused on the cost they control, where you would want them to spend money, but they're not willing to spend money?
That happens, and I have to encourage them to say, look, our time is worth more than that. We've got to go get that. Yeah. So yeah, that happens for sure.
I'm sure we could chat for quite a bit longer on this. Before we wrap up, though, you are a member of the NTMA, the National Tooling Machining Association. Can you just share some of your experiences with that and why you have decided to join and participate in the NTMA?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I just want to say one more thing about open book management that I think for anybody that's interested in pursuing that, the thing that is so critical about that is that it is not a panacea, right? It is hard work, and the number one thing that but it pays off. But the number one thing that I get and that you have to work on is to explain that cash is real and profit is theoretical. And so the fear that most owners have is that they're going to see these numbers on the income statement and they're going to think, I got that much in my wallet. And so we spend a lot of time training on the difference between cash and profit. And then they get to understand that cash cycle and the collections and all these other important aspects of the business that machinists don't normally think about. So, all right, as far as NTMA goes, NTMA has been a really a helpful organization for me. I joined in 2009, and it's been a great group of like-minded shop owners that get together at national events, at chapter events locally, and we share and help. And there's a ton of content that is helpful. There are a ton of resources that are helpful. Everything from the help we're getting now about understanding all the new legislation that's come out with the CARES Act and the FFCRA and all that stuff. We've just had endless resources to help us navigate this, and it's all because of the NTMA. And groups like the UMA, Utah Manufacturers Association, also help with that. But the NTMA is really plugged into its members to technical support, to HR issues, to discounts with all their associate members. Yeah. So there's just a ton of value in it that's been great for me. But probably the best thing is that at any given moment, I've got a network of 1,500 shops, most of whom I know, most of whom will open up their doors for me and let me go in as I would them, and help me solve problems. And it's been a very supportive network that has been helpful over the years.
I would say what I've seen is the NTMA is a network of abundance mindset machine shop owners. Definitely everybody is so positive and so abundance oriented. I hadn't thought of it about that way until you brought that word up today, but it's a super way to describe the organization. Have you been able to help any of them turn to open book management? Any of them approached you on that? And
well, we've had a lot of tours and got a lot of attention about that. We had a feature article in Modern Machine Shop about it. I've had calls from all over the country about people interested in that. The extent to which other shops have adopted and used it is unknown to me, but I know there's been a lot of interest.
Yeah. Well, I could chat with you here probably a couple more hours, Reid.
I
think we have a lot of common ways of looking at building the team and being intentional and deliberate about how you put practices into place and continue them. But I'm going to have to, I wrote down took a bunch of notes, things I want to consider. And it was just really inspiring to hear your story and how you lead your shop. I think there's going to be some good takeaways for the listeners from this episode. And it got me going here. It makes me wish I still owned a shop. And particularly, I've been thinking that what if we had open book management at Rapid? How much more successful might we have been if we had taken the plunge and made the effort to financially educate the team, I think it would have been a real positive, but it takes a lot of courage to do that, and I really didn't have enough information about it at the time. So, but anyways, one of those theoretical things. Thanks
Yeah.
for being so open, and
My pleasure. Thanks, Jay.
yeah. Any last comments? Any parting words for our listeners?
No, I think if there's any questions, I'm happy to, take emails or speak to people about it. So you're welcome to share my email. But this is
What is your email?
It's ReidLeanWerks.com.
And that's LeanWerks, as you just spelled it, .com. That's the website. Any social media at all?
We have a Facebook page, but we don't pay much attention to it. Unfortunately, I really do think our Achilles heel is marketing, and
before we go, because we do it, but I do want to say I think you have an outstanding website. So you just got to get people there. And for folks, take a look at their website. What really grabbed me were immediately it plunges you into 2 case studies that really give you more than any writing a description of shop. The case studies on the site give you a real flavor of the shop and what makes them different and how the approach might work with you as a customer. So kudos on your website there.
Well, thanks. That wasn't cheap, but
no, that was money well spent. You just got to get people there, right?
Yeah.
Well, folks, thanks for taking a big chunk out of your day to dive into the story of LeanWerks. I hope we're providing you with very specific ways to up your game and that you walk away with an actionable item to implement soon. Maybe you will think about open books management. If you do, I would love to know what your results are, and maybe we could document your journey there. And if you haven't already done so, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform. And it would really be appreciated if you shared the Job Shop show with at least one other owner who you know. That's my actionable item to ask of you today. Be a part of helping raise the bar for American custom part manufacturing. Until next time, keep those spindles turning and those lasers cutting. Have a fantastic day.